Hey there, pioneers. Welcome to the Reflections Cast, designed to immerse you in teachings about goal setting, dream building, and all things dynamic living. Join us for inspiring conversations as we unwrap these topics and offer insights for seeking positive change in your life. Here's Season 3, Episode 6, 4 Tips on Integrity. Well, all right, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Reflections Cast. We are so excited to have you. My name is Steve.
And I'm Melody.
And we are right in the depths of our discussion on integrity. And this week, he's going to be delving into some tips on integrity that really kind of open this subject up even more so than it's already been. So I can hardly wait to get into it. But before we get into that, just want to take a second. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for being here. And also tell you a little bit about what we have going on some of our other platforms and methods of outreach that we do. It's not just a podcast here. There's lots of other branches to this tree that we want you guys to know about. So, Melody, would you possibly be able to tell them a little bit about Pioneer Circle this week?
Absolutely. So we are very excited about the next season of Pioneer Circle. It is our online coaching platform and subscription service. So we are making some transition with the Pioneer Circle to be just a little bit more deliberate about especially what our rising generation needs in terms of content and care and connection. They are inundated with media of all sorts. And so even though we do have the app and we do have daily messages that come to them via phone, we are making some shifts to also just have a more embodied presence in their lives. And so we're sending monthly Pioneer packs to all of our paid Pioneer family subscribers. And each month it's just a little bit something different. Sometimes it's a book. Sometimes it's a different object or something that is just going to remind them of the things that we're learning together and give them something tangible to have in their home so that it's not just a digital space, but that it's a real life in-person space where we can live together and learn together. So we're so excited about the Pioneer Circle. If you're not a part of it and you would like to be, you can go to pioneercircle.org and there's all the information there for you.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I would also like to tell them about the summit, but I am afraid that at this point, it might be too late for you guys to join us.
Yep.
But you can still check out circleacamp.com and learn about all of the events that are coming up and also the link to our Facebook group where you can maybe see some shots from the summit as they're going on at camp this year. So stay tuned into those platforms and we will keep you updated. But for now, I think it's time we continue this discussion with Skip on integrity.
Integrity tips. The last few minutes we'll invest together talking about just some things I think are important in the process. These are not things that you have never heard before, perhaps just from a little bit different camera angle this time. Number one, always speak the truth. Always speak the truth. Okay. I thought I had misplaced some of my notes. I didn't misplace them. I just haven't gotten to them yet. In Proverbs chapter 12, verse 22, from the Living Bible, we read, God delights in those who keep their promises. God abhors those who don't. That's one of those words it's like an awful word, abhors. Oh, who wants to be abhorred by God? Webster's Bible says lying lips are an abomination to the Lord. Abhorred by God for an abomination? Ooh. But they that deal truly are God's delight. The Message says, God can't stomach liars. Yeah, you see, now we're talking. Now I understand. He loves the company of those who keep their word. And from Ephesians chapter 4, verse 15, the Amplified. Well, let me read verses 12 through 15 from another version. I think this may be the New Living Testament. I'm not sure. I didn't note it. Why is it that he gives us these special abilities to do certain things best? It is that God's people will be equipped to do better work for him, building up the church, the body of Christ, to a position of strength and maturity, until finally we all believe alike about our salvation and about our Savior, God's Son, and all become full grown in the Lord. Yes, to the point of being filled full with Christ. Then we will no longer be like children, forever changing our minds about what we believe because someone has told us something different or has cleverly lied to us and made the lie sound like the truth. Instead, we will lovingly follow the truth at all times, speaking truly, dealing truly, living truly, and so become more and more in every way like Christ, who is the head of his body, the church. And the Amplified, that verse 15 of that 4th chapter says, rather, let our lives lovingly express truth in all things, speaking truly, dealing truly, living truly, enfolded in love, let us grow up in every way and in all things into him who is the head, even Christ, the Messiah, the Anointed One. New Jerusalem Bible says, if we live by the truth and in love, we shall grow completely into Christ, who is the head. Proverbs, 4th chapter of Proverbs, the 24th verse from the Message says, don't talk out of both sides of your mouth. Avoid careless banter. Avoid white lies. Avoid gossip. You say, Skip, is that what it says? Well, not exactly. I modified it slightly. I added avoid for emphasis. It only uses avoid once. Avoid careless banter, white lies, and gossip. But I think there's more emphasis when you say avoid careless banter. Avoid white lies. Avoid gossip. So now you've gotten it 3 or 4 times. It is an incredible thing to me how those 3 things, careless banter, white lies, and gossip, are alive and well in so many churches, as if there is nothing wrong with that. It's just kind of what people do. Scripture says, don't do that. Here's what it says. Leave evil in the dust. What's evil? Careless banter, white lies, and gossip. Speaking out of both sides of your mouth. The New Jerusalem Bible says, turn your back on the mouth that misleads. Keep your distance from lips that deceive. So, tip number 1 in integrity is always speak the truth. Integrity tip number 2. Stand up for what's right. Stand up for what's right. 2 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 8 says our responsibility is to encourage the right at all times, not to hope for evil. Encourage the right at all times. That's what our responsibility is. If we are to be people of integrity, what God has written on our hearts, we live in outwardly, then we encourage the right at all times. Another translation says we can do nothing against the truth. We can only do something for the truth. Another translation says we have no power to resist the truth, only to further the truth. And another says, for we are not able to do anything against the truth, but for the truth. James chapter 4, verse 17 says, remember too, that knowing what is right to do, and then not doing it, is sin. Knowing what is right to do, and then not doing it, is sin. Simple English, a person sins when he knows he should do something good, but he doesn't do it. Now, that was a translation called the Simple English Bible. That wasn't just me saying simple English. The New Jerusalem Bible, everyone who knows what is the right thing to do and does not do it commits a sin. So, stand up for what's right. Do what's right. Number 3. Integrity tip number 3. Choose the right kind of friends. Choose the right kind of friends. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33. It says, don't be fooled. Bad friends will spoil good habits. That's simple English. Darby says, be not deceived. Evil communications corrupt good manners. And Weymouth. How many have ever heard of Weymouth? Good. Okay. The rest of you are debating. Weymouth's New Testament says, do not deceive yourselves. Evil companionship corrupt good morals. Choose the right kind of friends. It is clearly a biblical principle, not just a dynamic living principle. Number 4, stay clean. Clean could also be translated by the word pure. Stay pure. Philippians chapter 2, verse 15, second part of that 15th verse. In everything you do, stay away from complaining and arguing. I'll read that again. In everything you do, stay away from complaining and arguing. That might have had an influence on me when I was first putting together Circle A. In everything you do, stay away from complaining and arguing. It goes on. There's a comma after that. Then there's a so that. So that no one can speak a word of blame against you. You are to live clean, innocent lives as children of God in a world full of people who are crooked and stubborn. Shine out among them like beacon lights. So that's Philippians 2, 14 and 15. I said 15b, but it's actually 14 and 15. The Message in that same passage says, do everything readily and cheerfully. No bickering, no second guessing allowed. Go out into the world uncorrupted, a breath of fresh air in this squalid and polluted society. Provide people with a glimpse of good living and of the living God. Carry the life-giving message into the night. And Brother Weymouth so that you may always prove yourselves to be blameless and spotless, irreproachable children of God, in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you are seen as heavenly lights in the world. Proverbs 28:6 from Young's Bible says, better is the poor person walking in his integrity than the perverse of ways who is rich. Darby says, better is the poor person who walks in his integrity than he that is perverse, double in his ways, even though he is rich. Better is the poor person that walks in his uprightness than he that is perverse in his ways, though he is rich. Psalm 101, I think I will turn there. Psalm 101 and verse 2. Verse 2 and 3. I will be careful to live a blameless life. When will you come to help me? I will lead a life of integrity in my own home. I will refuse to look at anything vile and vulgar. I hate all who deal crookedly. I will have nothing to do with them. I will reject perverse ideas and stay away from every evil. I will not tolerate people who slander their neighbors. I will not endure conceit and pride. I will search for faithful people to be my companions. Only those who are above reproach will be allowed to serve me. I will not allow deceivers to serve in my home, and liars will not stay in my presence. My daily task will be to ferret out the wicked and free the city of the Lord from their grip. That third verse said, I will refuse to look at anything vile and vulgar. So another part of this fourth tip, which we've been talking about here for a moment or two in staying clean, is watch what you watch. Be careful what you look at. That's not totally unlike another portion of dynamic living as well.
All right, and we're back from Skip's talk on the integrity tips and a little question at the end. Is integrity possible? We're going to get into that next week. But for this week, we were able to hear from Skip a little bit about the things that really can make an impact on integrity. So Skip spends this final portion of the lesson giving 4 practical integrity tips that help us live out these principles. Tip number 1 was always speak the truth. He says that God delights in those who keep their promises and abhors those who lie. Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord. Says that God can't stomach liars. There's some great biblical references in this point. He also says that we must speak truly, deal truly, and live truly in all things, and avoid careless banter, white lies, and gossip. These are alive and well, even in churches, but Scripture commands us to turn away from them. Tip number 2, stand up for what's right. Stand up for what's right at all times. Our responsibility is to encourage the right at all times, not to hope for evil. He also says we can do nothing against the truth. We can only do something for the truth. And then that leads us to tip number 3, choose the right kind of friends. This is very Circle A minded. Choose the right kind of friends. Bad friends will spoil your good habits, and evil companionship corrupts good morals. I love that. I don't know what app he was using when he wrote this thing, but I'm sure he was able to switch through like 10 different versions of the Bible just to get whatever translation he liked best. But I liked hearing all the different versions of these verses just to get real depth in understanding the meaning. And then tip number 4, the stay clean and stay pure in everything you do. Stay away from complaining and arguing. He said that was kind of like a core foundation in coming up with Circle A and all of its guidelines that it had. And then he says to live clean, innocent lives as children of God. In a crooked and perverse generation, shine like beacons of light. And then he quotes another part of the Bible. It says, I will refuse to look at anything vile and vulgar. I will lead a life of integrity in my own home. So some really great tips, not easy ones to adhere to. And I'd love to get into a discussion about them. But nevertheless, these are kind of essential components to a life of integrity. All right. What did you think about that lesson for this week, Melody?
Yeah, I always love Dad's tip segments when he's doing a teaching, because you're like, okay, I'm ready for the tips now. This will be the easy part. And then it's like not the easy part, but it's always like the right part. Like it is what it takes to live into these values. And so I think this is no less true for this one, as far as these tips. And he's right. And I think when we hear these things, we're like, yeah, of course, like when it comes to the big picture. But then when we really look closely at our lives, I think we can all see places where, but yeah, I might tell a white lie here, or yeah, I might just be quiet in that space instead of standing up for what's right. Like it's a lie of omission. Like I'm just saying nothing. Or yeah, I know I should choose the right kind of friends, but also like these people aren't that, disruptive to my environment. Or I'm mostly clean. I'm mostly pure. So like I think we can easily justify gray areas in each of these, which I really appreciate Dad's teaching that encourages us to not live so far in the gray as we are usually tempted to live. So.
I agree with you. I also look forward to the tip section because I think, this is going to be the easy bullet points to jot down. And it's always like, half of the meat of the talk is in the tips section. It gave me trouble in coming up with questions about it because they are so logical and matter of fact, and the basic tips of integrity. And yet when I sit in it for a minute and think about, okay, well, but what does this really look like to someone? Then the questions I think can come a little easier. So for my first question, when Dad, he gives these 4 practical tips for living with integrity. Always speak the truth, stand up for what's right, choose the right friends, stay clean. But when you think about that in today's world, is that something that we really feel is doable? Can someone truly always speak the truth? We've discussed on previous episodes this season about this new idea of people speaking their own truth or their personal truth. And I wonder, is that consistent with what he's talking about here? Is that the truth that people need to be speaking? If someone speaks their personal truth, does that mean that they're living as an integrous person, a person of integrity? Or is there more depth to what it is that he's saying here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are a lot of good questions and all complex. I think that can someone always speak the truth? I think it matters what framework you are looking at the world through, what perspective you are living in. Dad was certainly living in a Christian framework and a Christian perspective, and so am I, so are we. So we can answer the question that way. But I think if we pull out of that framework, as Dad said at the very beginning, I think it was the first episode when he referenced Hitler's work as a work of integrity, like integrity as a standalone virtue is not tied to the gospel. You can be the same on the inside as you are on the outside and be dark both places. So sure, you can say your own truth and still have integrity But when you add integrity to the framework and the worldview that you subscribe to, then it becomes really important what you're speaking as truth. So, from my perspective, and I think from Dad's perspective, there are certain truths that are transcendental, that are true, whether or not we agree with it, whether or not we see it, whether or not we like it, that are true. And so in addition to that, there's a lot of perspectives that shift even within frameworks. So in the Christian framework, we could have 10 different versions of a truth on whatever the topic might be. If we're debating politics or pieces of religion or things like that. But I think what's most important here is our own behavior in the world. So yes, we speak the truth about God, and we speak the truth about love, and we speak the truth about these transcendental things that are true, whether or not we see them or agree with them. But then also we speak the truth about our own choices and our sin and our love and our way of being in the world. And so honesty becomes a really important part of integrity. And I think that's something that, no, I don't think we all do it perfectly. I don't think any of us do it perfectly. But I think those of us who are Christ followers long to do it as well as humanly possible. And, if we're making our choices out of loving God versus fleeing guilt, then I think we will quite often speak the truth as well as we can.
Yeah, I really like that answer, and I totally agree with you on that. But that idea of this list being a realistic thing that people can follow, if I apply it to one of the next things that he brings up, he talks about how do we stay clean, or how do we refuse to look at anything vile and vulgar when we live in this media saturated world where we can't pick up our phone without being advertised to. We can't, even get in our cars now without being advertised to avoid all of these things that life is throwing at us. It just seems really, really challenging. And then I was also thinking, even avoiding gossip when just any sort of news that's coming through whatever feed we care to pay attention to also kind of feels like gossip at this point. Is it really something that people can completely opt out of their lives?
Yeah, really good question. I think that, like we said, these tips are challenging in terms of staying clean and staying pure and avoiding gossip and all of that. So regarding staying clean and refusing to look at anything vile and vulgar in our media saturated world, I think that, again, are we going to do it perfectly? No. But can we choose to live a life that strives for that? Yes. I was recently reading a book by Paul Kingsnorth, and he's talking about this question, what do we do with the media saturation and technological saturation and all that. And he was talking about like ancient China and the barbarians, where there was this established culture, and then there were the barbarians who were outside of the established culture. And he was like, there's two kinds of barbarians. So when you're thinking about how you're going to engage with media and technology and the negativity and the filth that's out there, like there's two kinds of barbarians you could be. And the Chinese called them the raw barbarians and the cooked barbarians, which I found very funny, and I feel like I'll always remember it. But essentially, the raw barbarians were the ones who lived way outside of the city walls, outside of the reign of the government at the time, and they were completely free of it. And then there were the cooked barbarians who lived within the walls, but still protested in their hearts and in their actions and in their work in the world. And so essentially he's like, there's kind of two escape routes for the saturation that we face. We could be raw or we can be cooked. Being raw is essentially like we go to a remote monastery somewhere with no technology. Like if we really want to say we're never going to look at anything vile and vulgar, that's our best bet, right? So not many of us are going to choose that route. But there is another route where we can be the cooked barbarians, where we can live inside the walls, but we disassociate with the things that we don't agree with. And so that's the best answer I have to this as far as staying clean. If we're going to be in this world, if we're going to be using technology, if we're going to be engaging in media that is everywhere, we are going to see things that don't fit in this tip of staying fully pure and fully clean. But I think kind of like what we said on the last episode of being formed and deformed, everything that we're exposed to is moving us one way or the other. So if we are being those cooked barbarians who are in it, but who are actively choosing to refrain and to limit and to, I'm going to only be on my technology for X amount of hours a day, or I'm only going to, whatever the limits are that we need, I'm not going to have a smartphone, whatever it is. We're still doing that work to stay as clean and pure as we can. I think when it comes to the gossip feeling that we get from the news and things like that, which, we do want to stay up to date on the happenings of the world, but in an effort to do that, we are just surrounded with stuff that is not, we question the validity, we question the way that it's presented. And you're right, it does feel like gossip. So what do we do? I mean, I think that we curate our sources very carefully. We don't just willy-nilly go on social media and see what the algorithm throws at us. We choose where we're going to get our sources of information, and we only go to those places. Is that going to completely save us from false information or gossip type news stories or filth? No, but it's a boundary, and I strongly recommend it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think, in order to navigate the world, it's good to have a healthy set of boundaries. All right. And then if we take that next point of how to choose the right friends, if we're vigilant to that idea so that we're not going to compromise our integrity by bringing in some evil or corrupting relationship, could that just end up leading to us having such a strict requirement for our friends that we just don't ever have any friends? How do we determine what that right level of moral character of our friends should be so that we can be friends with them? Does that make sense? Because, I understand the idea of getting rid of what you don't want to make room for what you do want. But, the second our friend does something that we think is not quite right, does that mean we should avoid that friend from now on?
Yeah, I think this is a really good question. And I honestly think this is something really important to individually wrestle with throughout our lives, because people are going to come in and out of our lives during seasons. Family is going to come in and out. Friends are going to come in and out. Coworkers are going to come in and out, and they form us. Absolutely. And so I think this is a really important question to ask, because we are created for community. We are created for relationship. And we certainly don't want to be isolationists. We certainly don't want to be so prideful and haughty that we have some sort of strange criteria for who gets to be called our friend and who doesn't. But what Dad's really saying here is there is an inner circle of people that we choose that does form us very specifically and very deeply. And while we may not all have the same worldviews on everything, and we may not have the same perspectives on everything, I think that what he would say is the posture of someone's heart towards transcendental goodness, truth, and beauty. If someone's heart is postured toward those things and they value those things in the same way that we do, I think they're a safe friend. Whether they go through seasons of sin or struggle or suffering, if their heart is towards those things, then I think they're a safe person to be in that inner circle. But just because we have people in our lives who may not be safe to be in that inner circle in certain seasons doesn't mean they're not our friends. It doesn't mean we don't care about them. It doesn't mean we don't support and encourage them. It just means maybe we don't, have hours long processing conversations about deep thoughts with them. It just means that maybe we don't join them in the type of media that they consume or the type of activities that they're involved in. I do think he's so right that we have to be so wise about where we invest our time and with whom we invest our time. And I don't think it's a one and done sort of answer. I think it's a continual question and wrestling within ourselves to be wise about that.
I love that answer. And you definitely hit on this final little question that I just wanted to leave with. If we can just spell it out clearly. My question that I wrote down is, well, if we do all these things, we live this idealistic version of integrity, won't all of these practices just lead us to being a quiet, cut off, isolationist existence that is seeking some unattainable version of perfection? And then even if we do live in that perfection, we, in all likelihood, will in some way have to face the possibility of losing everything to maintain that perfection. Is that what Dad is talking about here? Is that the perfect idea of a person of integrity? Or is there more nuance to what the goal of this endeavor is to be?
It's a good question. I mean, I don't think that's what he's advocating for is, isolating and perfection, because that's not the way that he lived. And he did live what he taught. I think there are people who do go that route to a certain degree and have a little bit different experience of the world. I'm thinking of monks or different people who choose a more isolationist sort of a life, like Henry Nouwen or Richard Rohr or Mother Teresa or people like that who do live in that more quiet, cut off, mysticism. And sometimes that can be so good for them and the world. I mean, I've read works by those people that I just named that have changed me forever. And their wisdom is profound. And they did withdraw from the world in a way that helped them to find that profundity. So that it's a path. It's a path we could choose if we felt called to choose it. But I think that for most of us, we're not called to that path. Dad wasn't. Dad was very much a relational person, very much a person with deep friendships and deep relationships, and a person who gave his life to loving others and to leading others. But he also did adhere to all of these things. And so I think he's a great example of the way that we can set healthy boundaries for ourselves and our integrity and still live a life that's interwoven in the world and with others. That said, Dad was really good about taking that space for the quiet isolation, silence, solitude, contemplation that gave him the wisdom to be able to live well in the world and love well in the world. So I would say there is an important space for solitude and silence in our lives. I think everyone can benefit from that space. But I don't think he's saying that we need to go all be monks.
Yeah, I love that you bring up Dad's life as an example of how to look at this, just because it's one that I can look back and identify things that make sense to me as why did he do what he did. One of the things that was always very important in our family was watching movies. You and I would love to go see movies. But Dad was very particular. He did go to movies with us. But for Dad, even though he loved movies, he was still very conscious and particular about what he wanted to put into his mind. And so if we were going to a movie, he'd ask what it was about. And he wouldn't say to us, I mean, once we were of the right age, he wouldn't tell us what we could go see.
Yep.
But he would say, you know what? That doesn't sound like something I need.
Yep.
And So he wouldn't go to every movie that we went to. And I now as a dad, I look back at that and think like, man, but what, you don't know what your kids are experiencing. Shouldn't you be there to make sure they're okay? But he prioritized himself as an example of telling us, hey, this is what's important to me, and I'm going to maintain that character.
Yep.
Regardless of where you are at in life. And I'm not going to get in the way of you experiencing what you need to experience before you can get my perspective.
Yeah, you're so right. Yeah, he taught by example, and looking back, I realized how powerful it was for sure. So very grateful.
All right. Well, that's all my questions for this week. So thank you very much for giving clarity and depth and leading this discussion about integrity. We've got another episode coming up next week that is going to conclude this subject and this season for now. So I'm very excited to get into that with all of you guys coming up real soon.
Yes, it's going to be awesome. We'll close it off with the best one yet. So thank you, Stephen, for all the questions and the thoughts and the reminiscing. And thank you, everybody, for joining us on this journey with the Reflections Cast. Remember that your support means everything. So if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit that like button, write us a review, or join us in the Pioneer Circle. And please share this episode with friends, family, or anyone you think might benefit from our discussions. We believe in you, and we're committed to helping you thrive on your journey of discovering all you were created to be. Until next time, keep reflecting, keep growing, and pass it on.